definitely, there are no politicians in America who would defend Palestine, and that's simply because the Zionist entity is an integral part of U.S. foreign policy. So the support of the Zionist entity and its occupation of Palestine and the genocide in Gaza, it's necessary for America to maintain its hegemony in the Middle East, in the Muslim lands. Um, so that's as well as, the Zionist lobby here is huge, and it's huge with both the Democrats and the Republicans. So, essentially the Zionist lobby is, these super PACs that fund different politicians. They give a lot of money to different politicians in order to support them. And so the Zionist lobby has a lot of money, and they give a lot of money. So they get a lot of support from politicians on both sides of the coin. And both sides support the Zionist entity 100%, because of this, and because, it's necessary for the U.S. to maintain its stronghold over the Middle East and the Muslim world. So, and also too, I mean, the U.S. There's no one to actually counter, America in regards to her foreign policy, so she's going to continue the support for the Zionist entity, regardless, because there's nobody to stop her from doing so. Now, in regards to the student movements, mashallah, that we saw, across the nation and across the world. I know they were pretty big in Australia as well, on the university campuses. And this is something that was, it was pretty powerful, to witness in terms of the protests and the student encampments that took place, during the last several months. And I think because of like social media and things like that, the photos and the videos that have been coming out of Gaza, really introduced, the young people, the youth, to what is happening, in Palestine, and telling us the true nature of the Zionists and what America has essentially been doing for decades, in Palestine itself, within the occupation, as well as, in other places too. America is part of the upheaval and the violence in other parts of the world. And so it kind of, opened up their eyes, because here in America, we don't, they paint a very different picture of Israel, being this wonderful democracy in the Middle East, the only democracy, and that, they're defending peace and all of these things, subhanAllah. So a lot of people believe that. So when the genocide started and all these videos and pictures started coming out, and of course now we have the social media, so people were able to see it in real time. I think this moved people, to just come out on the streets, and they did so in such large numbers. And subhanAllah, they did it, even if it meant losing their jobs. Many people lost their jobs. Some students were kicked out of their, universities. They threatened actually to deport some international students who were here on student visas. Some states, I believe, or some lawmakers were trying to actually make it a law that if any international student came, or anyone on a visa, attended these protests, that they should be deported immediately. So, subhanAllah, that, they were really, standing firm on this, issue. And this is something like that America hasn't probably seen since, the Vietnam era, when students came out, at full force, basically protesting, the war in Vietnam. And subhanAllah, the response was exactly the same. The government, they responded with brute force, unnecessary, brutal, violent force, against peaceful protesters, against people who were essentially just doing what we've been taught since we were little, is that, you stand up for what is right,
Mhm.
that you hold your government accountable, subhanAllah. But this is just an illusion that that America, wants people to believe, that they are this true democracy that takes into account what the majority of its citizens want. But clearly, this is untrue. And we can see that, from this reaction that they've had, by, attacking these protesters
Mhm.
and these students. And, the US, or, it's funny calling it the United States because it's almost not united anymore.
True.
So America, right? It's kind of unraveling at its seams. And it was clear as day by their reaction to these student protesters. I mean, they violently attacked them. They used tear gas on them. They
Mhm.
were in full riot gear. They allowed the supporters of the genocide, to enter the camps with weapons and beat the students. There were actually soldiers from the occupation forces in Israel who are students at Columbia University
Mhm.
who brought in an illegal military grade spray and sprayed it on protesters, and they didn't there was nothing done to them. They did not get punished by the university. They did not get arrested, nothing like that. And subhanallah, the students who were against the genocide, who were protesting against the genocide, at one point they were actually trying to keep them from getting access to food.
Mhm.
Like, this is how
Yeah.
harsh they were, on them. And so the reaction of the US government, and the universities kind of enabled the world to see that the US, or that America does not truly allow, freedom of speech, and they don't really care about the will of the people, if it interferes with what, their agenda is.
Mhm.
And, if they did care about that, if then, we would have seen some movement, to stop the money and the weapons that they send to the Zionist entity. But, that didn't happen. In fact, they started giving more and
Mhm.
more, each
Even
time
they are competing to give more. It's like it's
Yes, subhanAllah, exactly. Yes, they were, yeah, giving more. And, even the universities, they didn't divest from Israeli companies. They didn't even make a statement against the genocide. In fact, if someone, did, like, in the case of Harvard University, there was like a punishment, doled out to that person. And so, subhanAllah, yeah, they just continuously would punish those who were speaking out, accusing them of, anti-Semitism and, hate speech, which is kind of ironic
Mhm.
given the fact that, what they say about Muslims and
Yes,
Palestinians
double
is,
standard. Yes. Mhm.
yes, yes, yeah, hypocritical, and it's a double standard, subhanAllah. So, um, yeah, so that's, pretty much the American government did not take heed of what, the student
Mhm.
protesters,
Mhm.
have been asking for over these past few months. And that's not a surprise because that's historically, what has happened,
So
when there's been,
democracy, it's a myth, actually. Yeah, no, only, only
yes, it's a
make
myth.
up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Allah.
yes, it's a myth.